All right, so let's talk a little bit about organizing our scene, but before we do, I want to show you a trick you might find handy. So I want to add this spindle to my handrail, and I would like to have it duplicate all the way down through here to make this just a little bit more ornate. The way I have it right now, I've imported in one spindle from the base mesh, I've applied a material to it, and so I'm going to show you a way to make this a little easier. So the first thing I want to do is I want to freeze my transforms so I can get this down to cleaner numbers here, right? So modify, freeze transformations. And so now everything is zeros and ones, right? I'm also going to go ahead and rename this to spindle 01, just for clarity's sake. And the way that I would usually duplicate something is I would select the object, hit Control D, and then I can move it as far as I need to. And I think I want to move this about 20 units. Right? But that's a lot of those that I need to duplicate down through there in order to fill up this entire handrail. So what we're going to do next is, instead of just duplicating it and manually moving it, we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to use this Duplicate with Transforms. And as long as the object is still selected that you just duplicated, it will duplicate it and move it. So if I click this, and you'll see that the shortcut key for that is Shift D, it will move it, right? And so I can just now hit Shift D over and over again to duplicate that same distance that I had already done. And I'll do this until I fill up this whole range. Yeah, I like how that looks. And it's got a little bit more style now, right? But by doing that, now I have 35 spindles just hanging out in my scene. So just recognize that all of these, this outliner in every project you ever do is going to start getting very complicated, very confusing at times. And so a couple of things that are going to be very important. One is to make sure you have everything named. And so you'll see I have P cube 1, which is this wheel mount base, or this wheel mount that we have here. And so I just want to make sure that I have wheel mount named. Otherwise, you're going to end up with an outliner with 500 P cubes, and you're not going to know what's what, and it's going to make your life very complicated. So as much as this is not an exciting process to make sure everything's named, it's very important. So down here, this is wheel mount base. All right. So let's start doing a little bit of organization here. So one of the things I want to show you, if I click spindle, I select all these spindles. We probably already know this, I think, from the previous lectures, is that I can hit Control G and create a group over here. So Control G just takes all those objects and puts it inside of a group. Right? And I can name that group Spindle Group. So a couple of things you need to recognize is when I am selecting Spindle Group, I am not selecting every one of those spindles. I am selecting an invisible empty folder, or an invisible folder that all of these spindles are in, right? So just the way I can move all of these, right? Recognize that the transforms over here, the only thing that's changed is the translate Z, right? That original one where we froze, all of its numbers are still the same. I haven't moved that object. I've moved the parent of that object. Okay? I can still move spindle 1 as well. Right? And when I go back to move the group moves all of that as well. So just recognize that grouping has transform reasons as well. And sometimes when we're grouping things, we're grouping them for organization, and sometimes we're grouping them for rigging or manipulation purposes. So right now, I want to do a little bit of both. Like I'm trying to clean up my outliner so I know what is what. And since I am starting animation, I really want to clean this up to where only the things I'm going to be animating are very present in the outliner. And so how I'm going to do that is choose everything that is not going to be animated. There's a couple of ways of doing this, but I'm just going to do it kind of the brute force way by holding Control and then the outliner going through here and selecting them. So I do need the wheel mount base because the wheel is going to be animated. So I'll choose the ladder. The anchor is not. These handrails are not. The doorknob and the door are not. I'm not going to have the door open. The wheel mount is that piece there, and I do think we're going to have some animation. Maybe not on it, but at least on the wheel. The boat is not going to be animated. These walls are not. These handrails are not. The ship is not. The gift box is. The floor is not. The wood barrel and the axe are going to be animated. So we get all that. And I'm also, so I'm going to go now and just over here to my layers. Before I do that, sorry. I'm going to hit Control G. And now all of that is in this one group here. Right? And I can call this ENV GRP for group. And the cool thing about that is very easily I can Control H to hide that if I want to, or Shift H to hide that. And what I realize is I have accidentally put the wheel in that environment. So to fix that, I'm just going to middle click on the wheel, drag it out here into this open space so it's no longer in the group. So middle click drag to move it around. And so now you'll see that the wheel is not selected. And what I can do is instead of constantly hiding and rehiding that, I can just grab this group and add that to a layer. So if I click this button here with the blue ball and the white plane, that's going to create a new layer and assign the selected objects, which is the group. Right? And so when I do that, go ahead and name this ENV layer and save. So now I have a layer and I can very easily turn all those environment pieces on and off. Even more so, even more beneficial to that. If I want to still have them visible but just not selectable, I can click this empty space right here. And so right now it's empty. If I click it once, it goes to templated mode, which means I can just sort of see the outline wireframe of it. And if I click it one more time, it looks the same, but I can't select any of it. Right. Now you'll also notice I can still select my sky dome, and I don't really want to accidentally mess something up on that. So I can still add stuff to that group as well. So I'm going to select the sky dome layer, right click on this, and say Add Selected Objects. And so now everything except for the objects I'm going to be animating is in this layer that I can turn on and off, and I'm not accidentally selecting it every time I select. If I drag and select everything in the scene, the only things I'm selecting are the things that I can animate. So that is extremely useful. I will show you one more thing that is kind of nice on this, but more than anything, just so you don't accidentally click it and get scared that you've broken something, there's this P in the middle. Okay, so don't get the P and the R confused. P stands for playback. And this is really a button that allows you to determine if the things in this layer will be viewable during animation playback. And so, although I can see, if I click the P, I can still see them. As soon as I hit play in my animation timeline here, they disappear. And then I can stop it, they come back. Okay, so if you want to be able to see them during playback, that P needs to be turned on. Okay. And so this is going to allow us to very quickly just disable this stuff and work with our other elements here. And so we are going to, over the next few videos, animate each of these things in a different way.